For example, we must understand the nature of linguistical terrors negotiated with our original founders, like and even all the way up till and after Abraham Lincoln. If you could read his whole collected works, but these works are all with summary convictions that are with roles with our with what we never had explained and explained only as lies and delusions instead. Not understanding not understanding and not being let to use organized crime terms such as criminal insidiousness, and such as archetypal criminal insidiousness, as there are proofs of this is that there is one that juxtaposed. In other words, the motivations for geopolitical campuses to tell the world that the world was flat and to have it blamed on other lies and delusions why they were doing that. In other words, on the linguistic fields, our nation's lost, top down and bottom up, and everyone blamed the things like physical delusions, like lie, like money. In other words, it's because we're ulterior from the only unobstructed value nature system, the only natural one that only works when it's unobstructed. We have criminal persuasions that were legalized in how? With our first negotiated roles with terrorism on linguistic fronts. So in other words, Abraham Lincoln didn't have free speech to explain what the Civil War was really about because he didn't have anyone capable of understanding it, what a criminal enterprise is, how it causes criminal insidiousness, how it causes, how it's run by associate criminals, how they had juxtaposed criminal enterprises, how they were blaming it consciously, teaching everyone, only realizing, incentivizing everyone to blame it on human nature as natural, even using forced political theater, terror theater, pretending white and black stuff was our motivations when it was terror laws. Also, they had with those terror laws, they have everyone juxtaposed as the terror theater, and no one's being honest, but they have to talk anyways. You have to play theater. And so what they did was rely on religions for that. But that was for a long term because they knew that in other words, with our summary convictions, colonists coming over here had nothing to do with religion. We know that because it's relationship to terror laws. And if it was about religion, religion's about the sabotage of the law and of morality. So it would be about that and the motivations with that. So the science is only letting nature of humanity with facts treatments into self-defense of themselves, juxtaposed with lies and delusions, and juxtaposed with worse than expert lean and expert glorification. It's in ways they didn't want. Abraham Lincoln didn't want us to glorify his name. He wanted us to glorify his acts. But he wanted us to glorify his acts in relationship to all his logistical impositions at once, because they were and are organized, not just in relationship to one nation or to a coalition of nations, but through geopolitical engineering of humanity, through geopolitical criminally re-engineered education, and all that to stay that. In other words, for example, in this book called Why We Remember United States Civil War to Present by Herman J. Viola. It's perhaps no one at birth seemed so unlikely a candidate for greatness as Abraham Lincoln. He was born in Kentucky in 1809. 9 years later, 1818, he's living at age 9, he moved to Chicago. Look at the gun violence in Chicago today. This is in relationship to systemic lies and delusions with our top-down litigation natures, with our agency, FBI, Chicago. I never wrote to them, but I remember advertisement, Scruff McGuff, Chicago, Illinois, right? Just Scruff McGuff. Look at the deaths in Chicago and the gun problems. Here too, as they have it interstate, these are breaching maintained causes to these negative value nature progressions. just like they're more rare in the suburbs, but they're connected to the same evil pathology between intercity that is maintaining everyone tactically, blaming what are organized crime acts on lies and delusions. And, with summary convictions, even with American history first. And that's how it's with the nature of logic. For example, my best friend, he said, is the man, a friend of Abraham Lincoln. He said he's the man who will get me a book. Oh, Abraham Lincoln said, my best friend is a man who will get me a book I ain't read. A cousin recalled Abe made books tell him more than they told other people. He had conversations. There's a story about him having conversations with a judge. So now he's understanding about law with a more sophisticated understanding than most people. And then this language lets realize and or the narrative in relationship to who's educated. Because it did it by school or did it by understanding people who understand the law. Now I don't know if the judge he dealt with was understood complex litigation and criminal enterprises and the natures they cause. In other words, they cause. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police. I'm only. I have a degree in English and communications, and I've studied since I was a kid. The insidiousness behind all that's really behind what left ratiocination not figuring this out with all the proofs there. In other words, what leaves such things blamed on lies and delusions, such grave impositions, active ones too. And it's not by accident. We have breached human logic and education. So in other words, to understand the summary convictions, in other words, Abe is a man who made books tell him more than other people. You have to be able to discern criminal insidiousness, needs inside summary convictions, and even glorifications of the names of our founders. It was in treatments of mistreatments of titles and of methods of getting everyone to indifferences with logic and with linguistics in relationship to indifferences enough shared to keep everyone's voice with multi-front roles, terrorizing anyone who wants to point out the proofs of unaddressed and negotiated with terrorism since founding, with our policing natures. And how? Because they're forced to share a nature of logic with complex litigation and with originally forced terror databases and litigation natures only realized as animals, but them not realizing too, because they were looking at sophistication in relationship to populations of education, tactically pseudo-education, conviction natures, like with the South, and with the narratives between the North and South, with both sides with the same, in other words, multi-front insidiousness narratives, working everyone up into what is now modern New York City poverty, and narratives with denatured landscape progressions, with colonizations, plots, and housing designs, forced by terror before we even had cars, in relationship to value nature system and resources, only realize self-defended divided, and only realizing we're cultivated that with, and to stay other means to all areas, to stay mass needs to share lies, to get away with lying, and with industries of psychology and of medicine and of branches of government together, only realize with the sciences, intercity, intercommunity, inter-database relationship being let with roles forcing long-term evidence fabrication methods that worked. That's why we have the Civil War blamed on prejudice, not organized crime, and not already stayed in terror entrenchments that James Madison and George Washington want us to understand free speech that they didn't have to explain. They want us to understand unbreached education too, that they needed us to explain. So this requires understanding nature of organized crime and nature of motivations in relationship to linguistics, in relationship to facts treatments. And this is really why it's the most important faith. Forgiveness. This is why forgiveness is so important in relationship to facts treatments. So one could read the whole collected works, for example, of Abraham Lincoln, but he doesn't. But he didn't have, and he wanted, and all the founders before him, all the presidents up till date, want free speech that they don't have in relationship to forced facts treatment natures in mass, multi-front, but all in the same, all to a raise in the same net, the same trap. In other words, the same terror negotiations that we originally stay and glorify, not by accident. Mass indifference was engineered, only let realize to blame this on human nature itself. And then there's methods of territorial areas maintain this, like with the software policing, and like on Facebook, and by having people make opinion natures where we're not using real facts. You see, like I try to report recorded facts about law. There's laws that people are supposed to report this, not hide it. But the way they're doing it with police forms together, they're exploiting internal investigations. They're exploiting court databases, database stacking lies and delusions about people who go before courts, and the courts are angry about them about things they'll never know, and they're not even real, because we had criminal industry positions demonstrable with this. I'm not even a lawyer. I'm not even police. I'm not anything but English major, and we're going to see why the predicate is a space value with English, and how it is a predicate act in relationship to what is unchanging value that is being exploited by negative value nature progressions caused by criminal enterprises. In other words, predicate acts are caused by criminal enterprises, and they're used to define them. I'm not a lawyer. No, in other words, not just interstate, but international and interstate with that juxtaposed to our areas in ways not realized in relationship to evidence fabrication methods with terror-linguistic methods. So not only can the people break the law pretending to be the law, they pretend that, in other words, there's healthcare people that I don't even know. They'll have recorded proofs because they forge people's names pretending they were in conversations with me in my town and with other cities, but they've orchestrated through time roles with this. In relationship to my freshman class, I did we had a federal tape they showed us on gangs, on criminal enterprises, but they had them too, only about Latin gangs. They didn't talk about the other nationalities of gangs, because we have these juxtaposed with our policing forms families, because of the nature of our original negotiations with terrorists being through the policing form, the litigation natures, the branches of government, and the sciences, and to what was stayed to all areas to stay there. In other words, colonization was no joke, and slavery is no joke. The only way to reach positive through it is to understand the proofs, the proofs of its, in other words, the nature of the evidence fabrication with the motivations for those, and with the needs that worked with those tactics to all areas, and with other terror laws. We have to understand all the terror laws with colonization. In other words, the only way to do this, and then when you face it real, when you face real negative value nature progressions, and don't entertain them and have them negotiated, then it's fun to address slavery, because we know we're overcoming its active exploitations of it to date, and how. We can't do this by blaming people, but by forcing finite facts, bodies of value, removing everything that's not true always. That's real justice. But we don't have that left, because in the nature of organized crime, negotiated with into affects opinion natures. So not only can people not have the rules followed, but they have people they're using the police with related confessions and to acts exploiting all ages actively and past, uncharged, realized, but being actively hid and harmed. This is, in other words, then they have people come on the internet and use one theme is they go meds, tell the person to take more of their meds. That's what they do. They forge doctors' names, spread rumors about me, and these are doctors actively involved with exploitations, again, of all ages of innocence, and of in relationship to reported and further demonstrable child abuse acts with the media. They reported on it. And God knows what they say in the courts, but I know that they've told related lies in the courts in relationship to their online roles with threats and with street affected confessions. They've been threatening me not to report since like 2004, and earlier through linguistic terror methods tied to them, and to related confessions from strangers related to police intercity, exploitations of women, exploitations of girls, all connected confessions from people that have indirect connections. They don't, you know what I mean? So they want to have debates about debatable things. Now I want to talk about the facts. I said, in other words, I want to talk about the acts of the people with the threats against women and against kids to me online. In other words, I want to talk about the police who switched names involved with that and contributed evidence fabrications and rumors and acts and motivations to school bullying with adults, coordinated with the stewards of the schools. See, they're putting motivations for them to take part of the school bullying because of systemic evidence fabrication problems through time, not by accident, because they've been using these little kids since they were kids for related proofs of evidence fabrication role with witnesses. And then people go to court the way they have the court trained, only realized that, in other words, they have fraud witnesses, standardized. They have already had the people in the courts telling lies with all kinds of cases in relationship to the roles with database stacking. It's not real evidence. Using the bottom courts to perpetuate terror, in the methods of self-defense nature of itself, as what they call government in the branches, each one, that is self-defeating, it's garbage. No, so they have to lie and tell delusions. And not by accident, we have this nature so easily exploited, maintained with needs to cover up how it was exploited like this in the past. That's why it's so important not just to not negotiate with terrorism, but to understand how we've been negotiating with terrorism. And to understanding how the science has failed, especially the legal natures and the treatments of issues with these things actively, and with lies and delusions, with them hiding them actively, and with the insidious indifferences with them, with each branch, how they force courts to settle things with their roles in it. See, but and no one's allowed free speech on the outside, and no, and there's terror methods inside prisons to keep even habeas corpus from working. I'm not a lawyer, and to keep it from working on the outside too with civil rights cases with RICO or I don't even know if it's still a RICO statute. With the transition from ACA to RICO, which is Organized Crime Control Act. RICO is Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. I think of 1974. I don't know. But what it is are statutes in relationship and processes and methods in relationship to needs to counter criminal enterprises, especially internation ones. So in the second debate with Mitt Romney and with Barack Obama, the whole debate was about criminal enterprises and treatments of complex litigation, which deals with sanctions. That's what the whole time when they're talking about sanctions, they're talking not about math, which we have experts who can figure out math, but what we don't have our honesty, integrity with our top-down complex litigation natures, justifications of the law and of standards and of morality and of whatever lies and delusions they tell regarding their recorded roles with the worst crime natures, exploitations of all ages of innocence in Connecticut through time since before our nation's founding and through natures of evidence fabrication methods reliant upon original terror entrenchment systems. So Abraham Lincoln, if he's going made bucks tell him more than they told other people. So this is what we're going to do with this system by understanding what a criminal, in other words, understanding the natures of negotiations with terrorism for the sciences with every nation, and with them sharing lies and delusions, blaming negative value nature progressions on other things instead, and how. And then that requires individual identities too, blaming their own evil on the other evil they see. And that's there because those people are being hurt by it actively too. It's not just that we negotiate with terrorism. It's what that stays active to all areas. So you try to report basic things that you're supposed to be able to report, like recorded child abuse acts, evidence fabrication methods in front of it. In other words, we know that we had police forms, even whole groups with roles with sick things, with exploitations of all ages of innocence together, and experts. See, so we're not being let to deal with real facts. And the branches are forcing, we talk with them about debatable things and with lies and delusions juxtaposed with it before dealing with their prior evidence fabrication act sequence fact shifts and whatever informations they don't allow spoken, which they admitted to too. So in other words, when someone's trying to ask for help too, the media has policing natures too that are telling them, they're directing them to pretend that they have, serial killer type insidiousness natures in relationship to their roles, putting stories about these things as they're told, but then not leaving the other sides and the proofs and pretending they don't realize the proofs, crushing murderously, insidiously indifferent, still acting like they could speak for the good. It's nothing personal against the media. I've been asking, I'm saying they just intensify because I don't have time for these games. You know what I'm saying? I want to know what they said about me too. They won't put anything in writing, and they admitted to putting lies in the databases. God knows why I was arrested for harassment. I harassed nobody. Guy kept calling my house, used different names, admitted to related crimes with Facebook, and with men that from my town who got involved with bad things since they were growing up, with police involved with bad things again, tied to their exploitations of all ages of innocence and of women, not just children, and elderly, and how. So we have to deal with facts, but they're forcing fights. They're forcing violence. For example, by having people slander people that don't even know me come on the internet in a pattern and say, "Oh, take meds," and they say mean things like that, and then they're spreading rumors about me. They even had the court employees pretend I had relationship to doctors that I don't have growing up. I never had a psychologist growing up. I don't have relationship to doctors now, psychologists. I don't need one. I need a response for the healthcare people in my town involved with the related untimely death confessions verified online and related other sick crimes verified online. And the police forms are doing this together, and they're exploiting internal investigations. So we have evidence fabrication natures measured out and used all areas needing to maintain live progressions. And this is actually consciously tied to uses and needs to keep natures that are with the most ill things, like the reports in the media about through time near Trinity College, child prostitution, all kinds of sick things, too, connected to confessions of an Aiello family in relationship to their roles with some kung fu place with with a gay group too, and would have KKK skinhead narratives tied to that too, and they have like drug motivations to slander people they don't even know, in relationship to deans at two colleges that switch names in relationship to this, in relationship to other confessions from their students, and from even one has a family member who made confessions they were involved with like ecstasy and all kinds of medical drugs, and with street drugs, and with related crime group juxtapositions, not by accident, to all areas. And then we have people that are saying that they care about safety. These safety methods and new hyped up energies with the police, with the campuses, they're hiding old evidence fabrication methods that are adapting in relationship to the roles with the sciences and their needs to adapt, to hide from the law as it. In other words, with software policing. So they have it not about real facts, and actively in all kinds of different ways. We're breached. We have lost on many fronts in the American Revolution. Every nation, every modern nation, it's a semi-modern nation, they lost to what criminally re-engineered ancient revelations to perpetuate their exploitation. So, for example, we're going to take faith and we're going to juxtapose it with the tree of life and say, what can it be that is true always, but not in one way that shows it's not true always? And one thing it could be is correlation. It could be nature inherent to correlation. And we put a faith on the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and we say, what could it mean? Not that in all ways. In other words, metaphorically, what could it mean? Metaphor is as something, and analogy or a simile. I mean, a metaphor, an analogy is like something. That's why we write poetry. We say it, like, or as, into the prepositions. But the point is, everything we have to use organized crime term. We have to use freedom, independence, not the Declaration of Independence, but independence with the statutes. That this was just to announce a counter physically to what was already entrenched here with the sciences. In other words, we have fronts and fields, linguistic fields, and ahs and uses, tool thought and reaction natures of everyone, not by accident. We have leaders incapable of having us have a conversation with them without us having predatory reaction natures. So that's how they play us. That's how our crime statistics. This is consciously attached to crime statistics, lies and delusions, actively. That's why they keep talking about measuring people's color, and that not explain how that's in relationship to criminal insidiousness, nature, in relationship to uncharged natures of organized crime involved with slavery. In other words, because we were negotiated with terrorism. In other words, the scientists were already entrenched with roles with this, and with only realized top-down sophistications incapable of the honesty to deal with proper facts treatments needed to help us out the complex litigation nature, complex litigation tables in relationship to forced shared policing agreements with nations, with wars juxtaposed to it not by accident, with terror methods, with internation gangs juxtaposed to it not by accident. The criminal justice industry progressing. There's still mass serial killing differences to terror prisons, into standards with them, methods of just pretending justice. We have to understand pretending justice, all the ways to fraud it, all the ways hearsay evidence is used actively, murderously. All way worse than that. So when you do that, then you can't tell the truth the way you're going about business. Then you end up having to make it even worse than that. We have murdered nations. That's why we have these crime statistics, all maintaining hurt progressions, maintaining human nature as a reaction natures to the law are expertly, where the experts are used as the breaching methods. So people can't even report things online. The police lie, and they just have someone type something online and keep terrorizing everyone for trying to communicate. If they try to go down to the police station, they even threaten women and citizens not to say anything. Too, with evidence fabrication methods and natures that no one's, people, it's scary to face a court that has roles confessing and demonstrating that they were going to evidence fabricate to hide what they admitted being a part with, federal crimes, database stacking, lies, hiding admitted fabricated police reports involving a number of departments threatening someone not to report recorded threats. God knows what they wrote. Some English department chair told lies with police with this. He wouldn't let me leave the place. I had no conversation with the guy. Then the guy told me that a professor changed her name. I don't know why he wouldn't let me leave if he wanted to have a conversation about her. And then the police came, but before I had to have the conversation with them, we were connected to the same people with the recorded roles too, with other evidence fabrications with police in my town, but between town, in relationship to mentioned things, all juxtaposed. See, what they do is make someone not be able to speak, and they have terror acts with people online, threatening people and slandering them, calling them names, saying, "Oh, take your meds." This is an evidence fabrication. This is a terror method. Sick, hurt people. Like they have like little gangland uses of everyone with expert lean, the exploited. They're still young kids at colleges. They're exploited reaction natures. These women roles, topics in relationship psychology. In other words, these are being used for evidence fabrication methods. These industry positions and policing natures with negotiated, originally uncharged and actively uncharged acts and roles and natures with this. So CCSU is a sick campus, and we're going to have to see how in relationship to other area campuses like Trinity College. But it's not because of the colleges individually. It's because of what's between the colleges, with the litigation natures, court police involved with related recorded threats and evidence fabrication acts. Because then they acted on it. Because then when the second time I came to, and God knows they also told lies to judges in relationship to this, and they applied. Judges had roles with it, and another one applied that he had a role with it when I was a kid, and there were people in 2004 who made related confessions. And at request for help, I tried to tell the police, get police help from the police a few times. They use passions to pretend they're mad about things, and they get seeded into putting lies on police reports. Then they push things away because they don't want to hurt people with the courts too. But what they want to hurt them with, they're hurting with it. It's like a multi-front. You know, we have systemic evidence fabrication natures problems, evidence witness fabrication, police report fabrication problems, coordinations of this, database stacking with lies, in other words. And no one's dealing with facts. So someone tries to report facts recorded, and no one will respond and just say there's lies, that the person's not honest, because no one will respond to the facts recorded online and other things. In other words, if you can't report a law, and the police are actively slandering you, using the right to lie to maintain criminal industry positions. This is why we have murders tied to this stuff. We have murder rolls, confessions tied to Greg Kyler shooting and connected to other police prostitution confessions, rolls with Weathersfield politicians, with our fans of family, and with their confessions in relationship to related body dumping narratives and media narratives, with roles with related evidence fabrications and cover-ups of connections to towns intercity. In other words, to murders and to crime narratives intercity with the worst crime acts. And they just say people, you know, make grandiose delusions that they don't even have conversation with. In other words, these aren't grandiose delusions. I'm asking for help to report the recorded rape threats, specific ones, like the ones from the court, with Eric Knerr, and with others connected to the same uses of the same federal crimes, posting fake legal cases, and using court connections and evidence fabrication clicks that are also emitted online in other ways that are demonstrable to evidence fabrication roles with particular cases. Again, with exploitations of all agents of innocence. So I have to start talking about disgusting natures of crime and of people involved with it, with confessions to me out of nowhere, and then threats with it online for them not wanting to talk, but they want to approach me online. In other words, and they brought up a related school and threats against family members of mine and women in the area and their kids. There's a problem. You know what I'm saying? So you respond in writing, so they won't respond. And they won't respond. In person, they admitted and demonstrated a pathology of attaching lies, sequence shifts of truths, and their rights to lie as police officers used with systemic evidence fabrication problems, interbranch caused, interbranch natures, self-defense natures in relationship. So we have Weathersfield politicians through time don't even know me, never had a conversation with me in my life, but they hide, even though I mention about recorded proofs and of related women asking for help and related to people tied to them. So they're hiding not just for their own self reasons, but they're sharing the means to get away with it. By indifference is shared with blind respect for police who exploit the laws that they're pretending to defend. And how? You know, with breaching roles, with our internation families too involved. That's why, because we have a number of known criminal enterprises juxtaposed in Connecticut, and not by accident, and with roles with these evidence fabrication methods, and with other kind of crime natures juxtaposed, normalized to our stewards, interbranch. So what we have to do is deal with real facts now. I have to give all the speech just to ask to make report a simple thing. I have to deal with terrors online and slanders, and that's tied to them telling God knows what to the media about me and to courts that admitted evidence fabrication roles related to this, threatened me not to report related things before this. This is a problem. It's a problem. Don't take it personal, Connecticut media. Respond. Just deal with facts. Let's get to the specific evidence fabrication acts and threats recorded, and then their roles with active exploitations of all ages of innocence recorded too, because there's too many people that are strangers to me involved. And the way it happened was how, for example, the former director of the FBI has connections to defendants of his that were in a case, related cases, and they like federal criminals with connections with, one of them had a daughter in my grade, and they had another one with drug dealing roles through a person in East in Newington who went to our school though. It had roles with evidence fabrication with police and with drug dealing cliques with them in town, interbranch families, and just because I was approached by these people sequentially growing up with a method of evidence fabrication that uses strangers with 10 faces. In other words, they make these confessions that are connected to each other. So you don't want to get the people you don't want to get, we have evil. We have evil with all ages of innocence. So to understand Abraham Lincoln, you have to understand how not only he didn't have free speech, but you have to understand how his whole collective nature works didn't have free speech, and how proofs of it with correlation show that still our presidents don't have free speech, and not by accident, in relationship to opinion natures and facts treatments, systemically incapable, murderously, and systemically indifferent to following the rules. And with mass physical delusions regarding behavior, and regarding what it means, and regarding all it's connected to. And with that being used to facilitate the real problems with the drugs, and real multi-front impositions actively exploiting and invested to exploit our most impositioned area, per the methods exploiting our suburbs. In other words, our most liberated areas too. Exploited by the same methods, and not by accident, relationship to all the lies and delusions, with in other words, fake theater that's not explaining real good because it's negotiating with terrorism intellectually and linguistically, and in relationship to unchanging truth, not justified, with mass differences, exploited too, not just stayed, So we need to get that evidence. We need New York, someone, in other words, this is the book, all right, you guys help me with the research. In other words, I can't, and I'm just going to keep making books and methods and games, and we're going to make the value working with the system. But while we're going to be working with the world to understand that we have a common enemy, which is not a physical person, or not a physical nation, which is not a physical person, but what is with our top-down, unrealized, we don't even know the names of these guys, our litigation, like Robert Luskin, like Attorney Chevrolet, who excuse me, he was told by a Judge Nations or by Judge Wingers in a 2000 case course, of 2006 case, if that case ever came up, not to defend himself. He was a defendant with former director of the FBI, and with like a guy who has a daughter in my grade, who had all these gang juxtapositions, all these crime nature juxtapositions with kids used for related, when I was growing up, for related evidence fabrication methods and database stacking with criminal industry positions. That a guy like go on job sites. Oh, I own it all with cocaine and stuff like that. In other words, we have all these police forms and investigations in relationship to all these things at once, only to maintain a nature of police incapable of truth and of defending against their roles with the original breaching and with modern breaching motivations, with facts, with treatments, and with terror positions, with industries, with medicine. For example, there was the girl with involved with sterilization. Her friend on Facebook was threatening too, like say, telling me to take meds. She doesn't even know me. No, this is a pattern of people connected with this college. We're all with like the kind of people who look like they're filled with hate too. You know what I mean? Like hurt conviction natures. This is like with roles too, demonstrably with these with younger schools making these hurt conviction natures distinctly for these natures of jobs, exploiting because medicine and healthcare has a number of recorded roles in natures and acts involved with exploiting Hartford through time. You know, per them and forging names, system with intercourt actors' roles with it at the same time. So not only one nature of court at the same time has been exploiting these places to in relationship to how that's juxtaposed with our courts too, and with the moderation of how they're trained to speak about things and not speak about other things. In other words, this is with systemic evidence fabrication, progressions, lie cover-ups affected in relationship to state terror entrenchment methods and natures to all areas. Because they use them and they never know when they use them, and they never know when they're going to need to use them to block people from correlation who might, who the proofs of this are around, but they're just not realized. And people get terrorized in relationship to what stays these campuses to stay in their community positions in relationship to not just realized industry positions, but exploitations of our litigation natures by maintaining them to context where standard lies are told in relationship to forsaking everything. Forget, it's disgusting. You can't even have someone make a report. How many times do I have to ask to talk about recorded crime acts? So you can't just lie. This is also tied to street ones and tied to police switching names in the department and threats for me. And when I was growing up, I had an affidavit about kids being threatened and psychologically used right until they were adults, used for evidence fabrication methods. They just attached them to fake conversations. They did that too with this relationship to, again, crimes that are exploitations of all ages of innocence. And so they want to keep having this tell top-down lies. So no one says, okay, well, what do you want to say? In other words, and they're obligated to do this because they told related lies about me in the media that are recorded. See, but they want to have that debatable. They want me to sue to have the law followed because of the way the courts were confessed with involvements with it and already invested to need to tell a lie because God knows what they put in the databases the past time. I've been trying to do this every year, trying to make a complaint. Every time I do it, they keep offensively, before I say anything, attach me to fake conversations about my father, which had nothing to do with the confessions. I mean, with the threats I'm trying to counter. It did because the reason they've been doing that because it must be the drug connections that the related people they pretended I talked about and the related agencies, they all had connections to drugs dealing and to evidence fabrication roles with police growing up and the drug roles with them growing up with medical families too and with the related skinhead KKK and And these people aren't my friends, and then they know that they're hated, then they want to pretend to be my friends in other contexts. And then if you try to fight them, you get arrested. And they're already saying that they're already been slandering you intercity, interbranch actors, and with strangers, with people from campuses. You go to school, you don't even know the people, because they have the little drug entrenchments, not just for drugs, but they have that used for evidence fabrication methods, like with the police involved with that, with the kids when I was growing up, like the Main brothers. These people were used for evidence fabrication roles. They're evidence fabrication natures. God knows what they have in databases, and God knows who are all those with the active exploitations, again, of all ages of innocence. So respond to the facts that, because these facts now are before, these facts came before they put related lies in court databases. In other words, so by not dealing with facts, they're forcing everyone to play roles with indifference to the rules and as them. In other words, faking them, because there's database stacking. In other words, and that's recorded. There's recorded proofs of that too. But you can't explain it once you go into court. You have to be, they don't let you speak, and you have to be humble. So, and they're telling the lawyers admitted to them being directed to write evidence fabrications by a court investigator and by other court police intercity confessed about in relationship to this, when they were threatening me not to make a complete, to record related other crimes before that recorded in relationship to central clicks. So they can't defend on paper what they've been telling lie progressions, spreading rumors about people in relationship to the maintenance of. The reason so many people made confessions to me was because of the nature of how many police were juxtaposed with pension thieves connected to my town and stuff like that, who had, before they were revealed as such, used to slander my father and stuff like that because he was a labor leader. And so it would, and the other labor guy, had the drugs with the kids and stuff like that, and had roles with police forms using the databases in the high school where I went to, and grammar schools in relationship to families that have evidence fabrication roles with related, pretending fake conversations about 9/11 witnesses, and where people were shifting faces. People were related to evidence fabrication roles. Then they make relationships try to go do business with my family members and weave them into narratives where they can't speak because of laws with business. And really they exploit all natures of linguistics, people free speech. And what they're doing it with the police actively with roles, with related child abuse acts and evidence fabrications, and needs to cover that up. They use related, reported, and further demonstrable area child abusers and sex offenders and their parents and related and patients and people they know who are patients of doctors who pretended they had conversations with me and who forged other doctors' names involved with this all at once. So no one will follow the rules and say, okay, who threatened what? In other words, they threatened me with rape, and they say that's good. And the person who did that, for example, not just one account, but this is the one account that mentioned that he was in conversations with the court that had a narrative that was unreal, with lies, saying that I was told to go back not to go back to a college, and I went back. That's not true. And that's one of the narratives. They have other police reports with the same arrest, and they all had admitted lies on it. One had me in a fake conference, pretended I was in a hospital I was never in. And then one of the people from the court said I had a mental diagnosis growing up that I never did. I have one now that I have one now. They said I have one now that I don't have. In other words, they said they forged doctors' names and they won't respond to me in writing because I never had a conversation with these doctors. And with the ones that saw my face, I never had conversations with them either. These are related methods of evidence fabrication and roles with it in relationship to other uh, proven and reported proven child prostitution cases and contexts. For example, in relationship to Trinity College's connections to my high school when I was a kid with the drug dealing and with the related actors. What they did, they have the people from the area go to the thing, they have roles with the drugs in ways that they end up having to slander people. No, but there's just the nature that doesn't like we're breached. We have incomplete predatory legal nature convictions forcing that our laws aren't followed. That's the problem with the Civil War and with treatments of Abraham Lincoln. We were breached in negotiating with terrorism because of the nature of the entrenchments already here and because of the nature of the agenda that our founders set forth for us. But because of the methods to the sabotage of ratiocination being so complete that we can't even have real science, and we have that forced murderously and with evil pretended. They're making really so then they make natures of women with those women groups and with medical groups and stuff like that, exploiting stuff. They have to be like, that's what they need, like, to be juxtaposed with like KKK, skinhead narratives and stuff like that, and all these passions. These are the natures we have with our medicine, with our healthcare, and they pretend it's cultural because they want to be fair for every culture. But it's that's why, in other words, they pretend they care about prejudice, because motivations to pretend they care about prejudice are maintaining intergangland healthcare and its street connections to our campuses, intercampus. And then no one can report even crimes because of the way the court individuals get involved with it, and they block it on. They won't let anyone do it, and they just have people type in whatever online and pretend that's evidence. So you could lie online, but you can't threaten, rape, and admit to roles with evidence fabrication to a court that was acted on. And they did this with the same group. There's recorded proofs that they were the ones that were involved with this, using the same court for related evidence fabrications with related intercity drug cliques with police through time, with witness fabrication cliques through time too, in connection with related connected murders and crime natures and acts that were demonstrated to me by how they affected strangers to confessions in relationship to the juxtapositions of police involved with criminal natures with this and the methods of it. So in other words, they did it so much, I figured it out and can demonstrate it, but I have to have the rules followed. I have to have someone take my police report. In other words, respond here because recorded proofs that when I went down to report it, and when women went down to report it, they were threatened with the relationship to methods where you don't say that you're going to evidence fabricate, but they're demonstrating their evidence fabricating, and with multi-front roles with the court, which is linguistically too complicated to challenge when they want me to entertain lies and delusions without unquestioned. And without them putting writing, and with them having admitted to putting fake writing into databases. It's a systemic problem through time. And these are connected to the same natures of crime and crime actors that went through the courts. So they have interest to tell lies with the same, even with a serial killer. They have interest to tell lies with him in relationship to the people in the prison with him, tied to him with the related evidence fabrication roles and acts and natures. We have sick courts. We have sick prisons together, and with their relationships to the area where the body dumpings with the serial killer was, and with two other body dumping area narratives connected to other related police prostitution confessions and exploited women with related requests for help. But they also end up getting used with this. So we have to not talk about the debatable and just focus on the crime acts in relationship to the prostitution, exploitation of women, and evidence fabrication roles with Enzo Faenza, and with his brother, with his cousin too, with a house across the street from his cousin, and with couple other houses in that area, more than a couple, attached to his narratives and confessions about Detective Dillon and his roles too, with confessions related to his roles with Ann Dillon in a house next door to my house, and with the people involved before with the related, stealing stuff and then selling it on eBay, and with police and roles with related evidence fabrications and real estate crimes with other city people, intercity. So they get strangers with motivations to pretend they know people too. They even tricked us to pretend that we were invited by a Maggie that we knew, or that I don't know, that someone I know knew, and then it was someone with a Maggie that was her roommate and used for related evidence fabrications and criminal acts, and in relationship to confessions by the people who invited us to that, were connected to the related courts and interbranch families.